Every video game has the idea of what's called a 30-second gameplay loop, and of course, Tarkov is no exception. The idea of the 30-second loop is best explained probably as a question. What is the most engaging way we can have our players interact with our game within a 30-second period? So the idea of having someone experience the best parts of your game after half a second that is so enjoyable that they want to keep engaging with it usually is the goal for a lot of developers. And again, Tarkov is no exception, but it's a strange case for sure. Tarkov on its own is such an anomaly that breaks a lot of the unspoken rules of modern game designs. It's baffling how it grabbed so many people's attentions over the years. I suppose people just wanted something to really challenge them, and Dark Souls wasn't doing it enough, or they wanted something in a first-person shooter genre. So, Tarkov is scratching that itch for many players. A game that is both challenging and rewarding with some of the highest highs and lowest lows I have personally ever experienced. I figured it would be interesting to dissect Tarkov's moment-to-moment gameplay and perhaps see what its 30-second loop is and why it's so compelling for so many different players. As stated before, a game's 30-second loop is a player being able to experience most, if not all, the core mechanics of a game within this short period of time, and having it be so enjoyable that the player continues to interact with it. So that begs the question, what is Tarkov's 30-second loop? What mechanics does the player interact with that are so enjoyable? And after thinking about it for a little while, I narrowed it down to I think 3 core pillars that make Tarkov so addicting and just grabs people to do just one more raid. They are combat, looting and inventory management in general, and the natural progression of your character and account. They sound pretty straightforward, but let's just dive straight into the first pillar, which is combat. Since Tarkov is a first-person shooter, the gunplay, getting into fights, and just experiencing combat are of course paramount to the game. While the engagements might not last a long time, hell, you might kill your target in one shot, or die to someone in one shot, getting into situations where you are actively shooting your weapons, moving around the map, and engaging with the AI and other players is probably the most important part of Tarkov. Getting kills against AI isn't too difficult. Sure, you might look at a scav from over 100 meters away, and they just lock onto your location and start shooting, but they rarely ever pose a consistent threat to the player. Nevertheless, taking scavs out is always fun. Plus, the XP you get from them is a very nice bonus too. Now, taking out other players can range in difficulty. Sometimes you run into a naked player with a pistol and absolutely destroy them, and other times you run into the biggest, thickest boy you've ever had the displeasure of laying your eyes on before he kills you from around a corner behind a wall. It sucks, but it happens, and everyone who has played Tarkov can attest to this as well. Despite all our personal grievances with the game's netcode and how that negatively affects our experiences, when everything is working as intended in Tarkov, Tarkov can have some of the most engaging, heart-pumping, adrenaline-spiking moments in all online shooters. The only games that have ever gotten close to these kinds of moments for myself personally are Battle Royales, which makes sense given the circumstances you're put into, pitted against 100 other players to be the last man standing, and Souls games because the challenging bosses are so rewarding to defeat after time and time again. But in the context of online shooters, nothing even comes close to Tarkov. Killing a player or players and trying to figure out your escape plan with 60 kilos worth of loot on you is stressful, but in a good way. It makes you tense. You get that gamer lean and you hold your breath for just a moment, which feels like an eternity. And whether you get out is up to your decision making, which makes all the sweeter when it works and more painful when it doesn't. But combat is not the only reason why Tarkov is so replayable. It also comes down to what else you do whilst in raid. And looting and your inventory management plays a big part into this loop as well. If shooting is one half of the game, then looting is the other. When you're not actively shooting your guns, making big flanks to try and overpower someone, you're just walking around the maps, finding things that you can search and see what you can scrounge for. Looting has been just as important as combat for Tarkov since its incarnation, and this goes for both looting the world and the people that inhabit it as well. Whether those are scavs with crappy gear that you turn a blind eye to late wipe, or perhaps take because you're down on your luck and you need whatever you can get your hands on, or it's another PMC and you need to be thoughtful about what you take because you killed this PMC. You earned this gear. You should take as much as possible. Do I dump my kit? Do I just try to fit everything? What about my teammate that died in the process? Should I hide his gear too? In a matter of a couple seconds, all of these questions surfaced and creating some interesting situations that you need to think about and execute accordingly. And the thing is, people across the map have heard the commotion you made, and they're coming to see what's going on. So you need to be fast, loot what you want, and get out before you fight wave after wave of players trying to stake claim to your spoils. There's a stress in that, but it's a good kind of stress, where if you don't loot fast enough, you'll have more bodies to pile up. Which for some people is the goal. They just want as much PvP as possible, especially at this point in a wipe cycle. Loot can sometimes take a back seat, but for many, even 180 days in, it's still an integral part of the game. Loot comes in all shapes and sizes, so anything we as players can get our hands on is always considered a win. I mean, I'll take myself for an example. I spent a solid 2 weeks actively trying to get a LEDX, going to many different locations where it would spawn and having no luck finding it. Trying different maps, different times of days, bringing a swath of weapons to help try and find one. That alone gave me reason to go back into raid and do something other than just fight people. And luckily, I did manage to find one. On the dead scav in Crack House of Customs of all places. And my reaction makes it very clear that this became a stressful situation that I needed to extract from. Oh my god, we need to leave. Oh god. Either way, loot is important to the gameplay loop of Tarkov. Without it, the game kind of becomes a glorified one-life free-for-all. With loot and gear, there is a penalty for dying. You feel the loss, which makes the highs the best in online gaming, and the lows absolutely soul-crushing. The final piece of this puzzle is progression. How you level up both your account as well as how your PMC evolves over time. When you start a fresh account, your ability to perform in raids is nothing compared to what happens if you stick with it and play through an entire wipe cycle. Your soft skills get higher, you can outrun and outmaneuver other players, your ability to handle a variety of weapons gets better. These take a long time to level up, but the dividends pay for themselves should you ever get an elite skill, which means you unlock a bonus passive buff to that skill. Normally, the two main skills that people talk about are strength and endurance, since those usually level the fastest. But it's not just your PMC that gets better. As your account level goes up, you get access to better gear from the vendor should you meet their requirements for loyalty and money spent. Higher levels mean better gear, making you more lethal and dangerous to other PMCs. It fits very naturally as well to work towards getting all the vendors to max loyalty. Account leveling eventually takes a while too. Once you normally hit around level 30, things begin to slow down. But like any good shooter, leveling up is part of the process. It gives you incentive to work for what you want. If you see a cool gun from someone else and want access to it, you can level up and make getting that gun much more consistent. Now, to be fair, level 15 gives you access to the flea market, which in turn kind of trivializes some of the fun out of the progression. But BSG has been dialing back slowly what people are allowed to put up for sale. It's not the Wild West of the old flea market where you can buy an item for the vendor and then sell it on the flea for more money. It's much more reserved, which is a good thing. But even the flea can help with leveling up your hideout, which in turn can make acquiring items also easier. It's this very cyclical repetition of playing, completing tasks, taking out scavs and PMCs to level up, which in turn levels up the vendors, which makes you scarier on the map. It all culminates together to create what many people have dubbed the perfect raid. Nikita, the creator of Escape from Tarkov, has said in the past that the perfect raid is a story you want to tell to your friends about. It may not be the most action-packed, you may not wipe the entire lobby and walk out with 70 kilos worth of loot, but things play out in such a way that a story is created, very similar to how stories are made naturally in Battle Royale games. You are the catalyst for what happens. The decisions you make, how you move around the map, whether you engage other players, all hinge on your decision-making skills. You don't have all the answers. In fact, you never will. You have no idea if someone is scoped in on you and about to take your head off. It's good that we don't know. There's no radar, there's no minimap feeding you information. You need to figure out yourself using clues you either see, hear, or find. Technically, you're always on edge. Even if you've done this 1,000 times, you're always worried that you might just fall over dead because someone had a beat on you from minute one. It's what makes Tarkov so addicting when you initially get into it and triumph over the initial learning curve. The hurdle is rough on new players, but with enough dedication and perseverance, anyone can get the bug and really enjoy the game despite its obvious flaws. But these are three pillars that come together to help make Tarkov's 30-second loop so interesting. It gets in your head, you just want to keep playing. Even when things don't go according to plan, it can still be fun, albeit frustrating sometimes as well. But what do you think about Tarkov's 30-second loop? Thank you for taking the time out of your day to watch this video, and be sure to leave a comment down below and subscribe for more videos about the micro and macro parts of games that make them so replayable. I hope to see you in future ones.